Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Okay, that's good. Okay. Right. So, what are we gonna do today? Well, today the plan is rather simple. But today the plan is we don't have to, but I want to finish this, the Path of Duality. If we can get the Path of Duality done, I will be able to release this thing so folks can have a look-see at it. As always, it's on our Ko-Fi with the Arcanist and the character generation. They are all also on the Ko-Fi. Yeah, I should probably do a redo of the document with the core rules in it, because at this point that has been superseded with new bits based on ideas I've had while designing other parts. So, what is the Path of Duality? What am I trying to get done? Well, it is the fifth subclass of the Battle Channel. So far, we have done the Path of Dreamers, the Path of the Martyr, the Path of Nightmares, the Path of Soul. Yeah, no, I think last time we had finished Battle Chandler, so I hadn't really gone into what these were. So I'll quickly go for what we've done. Path of the Dreamer, it's the oldest path. It's intended for those who've got the dream-based emotions. Basically, they have Dreamwalker's Right, which lets them, when they take a long rest, actually go into the dream, and they can bring some friends with them. Get some bonuses for being in the realm of dreams. They can give radiant damage so many times and potentially blind someone. Critical hits let them spend their hit die to heal others, and they also get some extra skills. They get a teleport, and then their final thing is when they're in the desperation condition, so below 25% hit point, they can immediately spend hit die to heal themselves out of it, just to keep them in the fight longer. And they get a final moment effect. So I don't think we've discussed this, because this was something I came up with. God, it's got to be about a week ago now. A week ago now, I came up with the idea, because I went, death is weird, because kind of you're in this unconscious state and then you're dead, which is very true to real life. But it means you can't have the dramatic moment, the final words, which is where final moment comes in. So it's basically you are dead, you get to do one final thing. And for most classes, it's just your final moment is you can do something very basic. What battle channelers tend to get as part of their subclass is they each get a final moment thing, with the exception of Soul. Soul so far has not had a final moment because they're about living, they're about discovering yourself, and you can only do that if you're alive. Whereas Martyr, Dreamers, and Nightmares are very much, their narrative is they are the bulwark. They stand, they fight, and they will probably die. So Dream gets to basically heal the room, and then they're dead. And the thing with the battle channel ones is Dream and Nightmare, you get to pick. Oh, hello. Yeah. we're just going quickly through the subclasses before I try and complete the final one, because then I can put on Ko-Fi the full battle channeler for people to have a look at. For the people who don't have access to my in progress huge design doc that's now like 300 pages long. So yeah, dreamers get as their final moment. They get to heal people. They die. They can only be brought back by wish or true resurrection, but they get the choice to make that action, and then yeah, they're dead. Nightmare, it's when they get to do it. It's they do a lot of damage, and then they turn into a monster that they can't be resurrected unless the party kills the monster version of themselves. And then Path of the Martyr is the only one where you don't get a choice. You have to use the final moment because it's what the class is built around. And it's basically you punch someone really fucking hard. And then you're dead. And yeah, so that's them. Nightmare also has some effects of like giving in to your emotions, using your hit die to boost damage. So whereas Dreamer is about use your hit die to heal others, it's Nightmare is about using your hit die to hurt others. And then we have Duality, which is what we're currently trying to write. Duality is interesting. I've got to try and make it work in that the conceit is you have two emotions. You have one nightmare, one dream, and you get to operate them both at once. So I've got to kind of make that work. I've got to decide if we want to have a final moment ability for this subclass. It's suited to the other two because they are heavily tied to the dream, whereas Duality is less tied to the dream, they're more tied to the emotions themselves. So I'm not sure a final moment works. This is where it gets a bit weird. In fact, it's where it gets very weird. Yeah, I'm not too sure. We've got to make it that you can have two emotions. I'm tempted to maybe try and make a... You can channel two emotions, but you can also kind of turn yourself light and dark. You can focus on one or stay in the middle. Yeah, it's... I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what I want to do here. And that's the problem. That is the problem. I'm not quite sure what I want to do here. But because I've got all the others done, I kind of want to get this done, as it were. And I'm not quite sure how we want to... Yeah, it probably will. It's just I'm hoping this stream will encourage the click moment sooner rather than later. Because I have agreed to do a promise. Well, I've agreed to do the promise auction. The promise auction is nearly done. so far, I've got one bid in for the D&D adventure, well, TTRPG adventure I promised to run. I've got two people currently bidding over the world building advice. No one's yet asked for the games design, which, okay. To be honest, it's kind of nice no one's bid on the games design one, because if the games design one got bid on, I'd be sat there going, and I need to put everything on hold. Auction's going very well. Some of the auctions are being very popular. But we've got till 8 o'clock, so technically anyone can swoop in, because there's a couple that have 0 votes. I imagine like about 6, 7 p.m. you might get some people trying to quickly nab the things that have like a couple of auctioneers still going for them. But yes, so my attention is going to be ever so slightly like my attention's going to be ever so slightly somewhere else. So I need to think about what I want to do there. But while I've got the time and I've got the nothing else on my plate, I need to consider how to do this shit. So I think the first thing we have to. So I think the key thing's going to be it's not tied to the dream. So it's not going to give the skills like the others did at level 1, which is fine because you're going to get 2 traits, which I think works. We will soon find out. So. So. I'm glad to hear it's intuitive. That's a good thing to hear. And I have sorted the basic equipment. I'm now going to briefly procrastinate a second by going into because I kind of fell into a rabbit. I was meant to stream yesterday, and I fell into a rabbit hole in that I made the equipment section rules. So the equipment section is very simple. There is only copper, silver, gold. There's some bits about trading, barter, unusual items. There's a smaller list of equipment. And we've kind of broken it into pieces because it will kind of help, hopefully, game guides be like, okay, this is what I need to, this is the kind of things we will sell here. Yes, now you can play with equipment. There's a bit about spell casting, foci as weapons. All staffs are treated as quarterstaffs, and the rod is treated as a club, but you can pay 50 gold pieces to reinforce it to be treated as a mace. Tools. The pricings are a bit nicer than traditional D&D, primarily because they annoyed me. Stuff about to help with the game guide, but also people like generally, if depending on your kind of living conditions, this is what would your average earning be? What would your price per day be for like cost of living, tavern costs, services. Here we go. Specifically hirelings, as in the people who D&D, like, I noticed the D&D rules just go everyone's a hireling. I'm like, no, they're two different things. Hirelings are your companions that you can hire, and they're in a different section that hasn't been written yet. Whereas services is what we're calling it when like you're going to the shop. I can move this now. So, armor is the biggest change. So I'm going to explain this one because this will impact a lot of different things. So armor is different. Okay, so you still have light, medium, heavy armor. That's still the same. You still have clothing, and if you're just wearing clothes, your hit target is 10 plus your agility. Nice, simple, easy. Some other stuff gives you other calculations, like in D&D. You pick a calculation, that's the one you go with. If you have a suit of armor, a suit of armor is made of 5 pieces: your torso, the legs, the feet, the head, and the hands. The chest piece is what determines your hit point calculation. The other pieces apply a modifier to the core piece. It's an Uzlan bird of death. Fair enough. The important thing is, because I realised halfway through when I was going, oh yeah, your arms give you a hit target bonus of this, that, the other. It doesn't make sense because so the calculation default is 10 plus your agility. That's for wearing nothing. Because every armor piece is part of a set, the actual hit targets for the torso is less than 10 plus your agility. So it made 0 sense. Because you would just go, well, I'm just not going to wear any torso piece, and I'll just wear like gauntlets and stuff and have a huge AC. So how it works is the hit target bonus for having your head, hands, legs, and feet only apply to the torso armor. So if you go with clothes and you put on gauntlets, it will have 0 effect. If you have, however, leather torso armor and you wear gauntlets, then the gauntlets bonus will apply. I hope that makes sense. If you are not trained in armour, it is slightly harsher than it used to be. If you are not trained in armour and you do not wear and you wear armour, not only do you have disadvantage on physique and agility, which is what D&D did, you also have disadvantage on endurance. And because a trait test is attack rolls, is for D&D attack rolls, saving throws, and skill rolls, this means you have disadvantage on attacking people, and you have disadvantage on your saving throws, which is why endurance is impossible. You can't go around in socks and have ridiculous AC. You also can't cast spells or manifest psychic powers if wearing armor that you are not trained in. So, armor has properties. These keywords are replacing some of the bits that were just in the table, and the reason is this. If I give you a keyword, when you are crafting a magic item, if it is a bad keyword, you can use some of your crafting to remove the bad keyword. You could also use some of your crafting to add the good keyword. I might add more armor properties later. These were just some initial ones based off base D&D. So you have clanking, which is you have disadvantage on trait tests to move quietly and undetected. I didn't pick deliberately stealth because there might be a time where if I give you disadvantage in stealth, if you are stood perfectly still, you're not moving, why does that armor naturally mean that, like, you're spottable? Especially if you put effort into, like, covering it with mud and leaves and other stuff. So, with clanking, it is purely of disadvantage if sound is required, if sound is one of the key parts. Primarily because padded armor also has the clanking rule, so it especially doesn't make sense if it was just all stealth. Comfortable is you can sleep in the armor without a penalty. Heavy has changed, so heavy is taking the strength requirement and keywording it. So how heavy works is you have heavy X. What this means is if your strength score is equal to or greater than X, nothing happens. You can wear the armor perfectly fine. So say the armor had a strength requirement in D&D of like a 14, it would be heavy 2. And so if your strength is equal to or greater, you can wear it fine. If not, you have negatives. And the negatives are, for every 1 meter of movement, you have to add an additional number of meters, which is the difference between X and your physique trait. So if you have a strength of, if you basically had a strength of 0 and it had a strength requirement of 14, you would have to, for every meter you walk, you would lose 3 meters of movement. You cannot use a flying speed that isn't provided by spells or psionic powers if the armor's too heavy for you. If you have wings and you're trying to wear plate armor and you're not strong enough, you ain't gonna fly. And you have disadvantage on physique, agility, and endurance tests. So effectively, it's like not being trained with some extra negatives. Then you have reinforced. Reinforced is like silvering a weapon. In this case, you pay 25 gold pieces per armoured piece. And I haven't worked out what reinforce gives you yet. It's something I'm going to come back to. But effectively, reinforces you will get, and it's the equivalent of being a silvered weapon. It's an additional thing you can pay for any piece of armor, magical or non-magical, and it just buffs it a little. Sturdy is the armor can take a lot of blows. For each piece of armor equipped with its weapon property, you reduce the damage taken by bludgeoning, piercing, slashing. Because the key thing is, you could have a plate torso with leather hands and leather feet, but chain legs and a chain head. At which point, each of them is a piece, so each of them will have different rules. Armor groups is quilted, mail, plate, and composite. They have no immediate effects, but what it means is if I wanted to, I could make a feat or a subclass ability that goes, if you're wearing only quilted armor, get this effect. If you're wearing only mail armor, get this effect. So I can target light armor, medium armor, heavy armor, or I can target a type of armor. And then there's the armor set bonus. This is the other bit. So if you have all pieces of armor that are the same exact type of armor, you get a set bonus. So if you have a complete set of plate armor, you get a set bonus. If you have a complete set of leather armor, you get a set bonus. If you have a complete set of magical armor, magic armor may have a set bonus. So say there's the trying to think of art. There isn't really ever an armor set in Magic and D&D because usually it's like a piece or two. Say there was, I think there's a set called I think there's an armor called the Scorpion armor. So let's say there's the Scorpion armor set. You had to go out and you had to buy each piece. You had to buy the head, the legs, the chest, the feet, the hands. If you got the complete set of the Scorpion armor, there would be a set bonus for Scorpion armor, and say the Scorpion armor's plate armor, you would get the plate armor set bonus because it's 5 pieces of plate armor, and you would get the Scorpion armor bonus because it's all the pieces of the Scorpion armor. The key thing is some armor sets are not a full 5-piece. So, for example, it could be that there is a magic plate armor set called the armor of the Templar, and it's the torso, the head, and the hands, and the legs. We'll say that you've got 4-piece armor set, but the feet are free. Well, what this means is you could then get the boots of Elvenkind. So you would have, so you kind of have this thing where you're kind of going, okay, is the set bonus what I want, or would this unique magic item set that would cost me a set bonus be more valuable, or is it worth me trying to find an armor set that doesn't require all the pieces? And then we have some fun bits. So currently you have padded, leather, studded. As you can see, they've not got their set bonuses yet. These had some important ones, so the chain shirt and the breastplate. These two are very important. But you can see kind of here how it works. You've got 8 plus your agility, max 2, which is less. It's less than the 10 plus your agility. But the key thing is every other piece other than the torso adds a +1. So if you went for a full hide set, so you get the full hide set here, you need all 5 pieces to get the set bonus. But that would then mean that your AC would actually go from 8 plus agility max 2 to 12 plus agility max 2. But the important one is chain shirt and breastplate, because they get something special. Because chain shirt and a breastplate is only your torso. But how they work is, and this is where the mail plate, quilted, and composite came into it. The chain shirt says you can use the chain shirt as the torso piece for any other mail armor sets set bonus. Yeah, you could only add magic special armor. It's the thing is, the key thing when you're designing a system is to give room that other people can look at this thing, go, huh, that sounds cool. Let's completely make our own thing based off this basic principle. It's why I added in the keywords, because I'm not 100% I'm going to have anything bar, chain, and breastplate, their effects. But other people could come up with an effect, and if that happens, well, cool. They can totally make some homebrew that works like that. But yeah, so chain shirt and breastplate both have an ability that goes if they are attached to an armor in their armor group, they will count as the torso piece for the armor set. So say, because as you can see, plate costs 150 gold pieces per armored piece. And you're sat there going, okay, it's very expensive. This is going to cost me, what's that, 300, 600, 750 gold for a complete set of plate. That's quite a lot of gold. So what you could do is you could go, I'm going to pay the 600 gold for the head, the hands, the feet, the legs. I'm then going to pay the 80 gold for the breastplate. Still gives me sturdy. Has a slightly lower AC. But the breastplate will let me have the set bonus for a complete set of plate armor without actually having plate armor. So that's the current goal there. Shields, their important thing is there is light shields now that give you a +1 hit target bonus. I've seen some talk of trying to change how shields work. I'm not 100% certain. I'm not 100% sure yet. Weapons, likewise. Weapon properties, you have ammunition that works the same way. At some point, I'll probably go through these and actually see if I want them to work as they currently work or modify them. The special stats, I've just called the name of the weapon and put them in. So disc blade it's a large disc you throw at your opponents, and it can effectively boomerang back at you as long as you don't roll a natural one. Finesse works as it does. Gauntlet lets you basically increase the damage die of your unarmed strike. Heavy works currently does. Lance does what currently does. Martial arts is just purely there to say it's a martial arts weapon for the martial artist. So instead of you having to look up monk and go, okay, is it a martial art weapon? Is it not? Instead, it's this list here just goes, does it have the martial arts keyword? Cool, it's now a martial arts weapon. Silvered, like with reinforced, is a weapon property, and like reinforced, it's a weapon property you can pay gold for. So how silvered works, because what I didn't realize about silvered was silvered just says this might help you overcome people's resistances, which is not actually how it's played. Most people go, it ignores the non-magical part of non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, damage resistance. So how I say silvered works is silvered ignores resistance to non-magical piercing, bludgeoning, slashing damage and reduces immunity to purely resistance. So it means it still doesn't help you against magical resistance and immunity to magical piercing, bludgeoning, slashing damage. It just stops the non-magical. And if someone has a vulnerability to silver damage, then they get extra hurt still. Everything else largely works the same. There are weapon groups. This is just to allow us to kind of we can then just go, hey, here's a feat, here's a keyword you can affect to basically affect a whole ton of weapons. Which bit's so vague? Is it the wizard's version or my version? I hope my version isn't vague. As you can see, a lot of these simple weapons for martial arts keyword, largely because I just stuck with wizard's version. Weapons we added in a scythe because it didn't make sense to me not to have a scythe. We added in the disc-blade, we added in the knuckle claws, and we added in the meteor hammer. largely because I've made homebrew stuff that needed those weapons, so I just took them from my other homebrew and put them in. This bit here is specifically because there was talk during the D&D summit that this might be something one D&D does, where basically you get a bonus effect based off what you know. So I kind of want to play with that and just kind of use that as something to bounce off of. Improvised weapons work as they did before. Adventuring gear works as they did before. Oh yeah, adventuring gear was specifically because there were certain bits in the gear item I went, no one in their right mind should sell at a general shop a crowbar, a sledgehammer, or a grappling hook. Only an adventurer should get these, and probably not from a reputable vendor. So I kind of just put it into well, the thing is, if you actually read improvised weapons, it does have an entire bit saying, if there is a table leg, it is a club. There's an entire paragraph that basically describes how the game guide can basically go, hey, this improvised weapon is like this weapon you're trained in, so treat it like this weapon that you're trained in. The only time you use a 1d4 is if the item you're using has no resemblance to any other weapon, or if you're using a ranged weapon to make a melee attack, or throwing a melee weapon that doesn't have the thrown weapon property. Only in those three instances should you ever call it an improvised weapon. If an improvised weapon acts like an actual weapon, it's just the actual weapon. At least that's how D&D says it should be treated, so that's how I'm going to do it. I haven't got to trinkets yet. I want to go through the trinkets table, come up with my own things, have some fun bits. So yeah, that's items. So that's something people can play about with, to Path of Duality. This is the problem, though. It specifically says the DM gets to make the decision. The problem is if your DM hasn't read through the section properly, they will make an uninformed decision. This is like a lot of D&D. A lot of D&D has rules that technically that work weirdly. For example, someone pointed out to me a very interesting quirk. So most D&D players can tell you that if you cast that the general proviso is you can only cast one spell on your turn unless you cast a bonus action spell, at which point you may use your action to cast a cantrip. That is the traditional logic. However, it was pointed out that technically nowhere in the rules does it ever say you may only cast one spell a turn. It only states that if you cast a bonus action, you may then, a bonus action to cast a spell, your action has to be a cantrip. It doesn't state that if you had two actions, you could not cast two spells. Which originally caught me off guard. Then I looked it up and went, technically, it doesn't ever say that. Because I imagine the rules writers never expected that a wizard would ever be able to get two actions in a single turn. Wizard Fighter is potentially underutilized. I don't actually know in that instance. Let me just look up D&D Beyond. D&D Beyond. If I look up fighter. What's the exact word on action surge? Action surge. Second level, you can take one additional action. Yeah, no, technically it does not state it only has to be for the attack action. I think it's just it just has to be another action. So let's have a look. Because just to prove that I'm not complete full of horse crap. Does Action Surge give you that many later on? I'll have to wait. Fight it. Where's spells? Casting a spell. Yeah, because it goes. Most actions require a single action to cast. Some spells require a bonus action. A spell cast with a bonus action is especially stiff. You must use a bonus action on your turn to cast the spell, provided you haven't already taken a bonus action this turn. You cannot cast another spell during the same turn, except for a cantrip with a casting time of an action. But nowhere does it say if you have casting time of an action, you can only cast one spell. Find class features. So Action Surge. Use this feature. Starting at 7th level, you can use it twice before a rest, but only once on the same turn. So yeah, you can only get 2 spells off. Technically, yeah, you could only get 2 spells off in a turn because you would have action number 1, action number 2. Extra attack only applies to the attack action, not to your spells. No spell uses the attack action. It is considered a separate action. So a fighter wizard would only be able to get 2 spells off in a turn because they couldn't use the bonus action. Because the bonus action specifies that you can't use your action for a normal spell. So you could use your bonus action to second wind, while you use your 2 actions to cast 2 spells. So you can double fireball. No. So extra attack is you take the attack action, and the attack action is specifically you can make 1 melee or ranged attack using the making the attack section, which is specifically for a weapon, or using your fists. A spell is a separate action because the attack roll is part of the spell, but the spell itself is part of the action, if that makes sense. I personally have never had a problem with it, but that's primarily because the point of extra attack is to make the non-spellcasters be able to hopefully keep up with the people who are casting spells, because your weapon damage never goes up. And your stat increase at the end of a weapon attack is so small, you need those extra attacks to basically keep up with the fact that for every level of spell, the wizard is adding an extra damage die to their level 1 spell. If you let them cast a spell for every attack action, that would be horrifying. Though you could. I could maybe see a way where you could design you could theoretically do it. You'd probably have to do it at the class level, but you could maybe do it at the subclass level. Maybe. Where what you do is you state you could use multi-attack, and what it is, instead of making the attack action, you're allowed to multi-attack cantrips. So you could get 2 action cantrips off in a turn. You could maybe do that. There's still probably an imbalance there for the fact that Firebolt does do better than a normal weapon, because Firebolt's damage does increase as you level. But what you could maybe say is if you use multi-attack, you could include in the multi-attack effect that if you were to multi-attack for multiple firebolts, for example, you had to treat it as if you were a level 1 character. So you would get 2 firebolts, but they're both only doing minimum damage. Or you maybe make it that like they're allowed to, they effectively are half the level that they should be, half the power level that they should be, to make up for the fact that you're attacking twice. You would probably have to make it deliberate for the class or subclass. I mean, it'd be an interesting way of doing your own Eldritch Knight is basically going, you can swap out any attack action for a cantrip. Yeah, you could potentially do that. That would maybe work. It would require some balancing and some thinking about how to do it. But that's the point. If you were to let someone do multi-attack, the action surge one you can't stop, because by the technicality of the rules you can cast as many action spells as you have actions. If you were to have a multi-attack ability, though, that is why I would probably specify you have to cast the spell at its minimum level. You cannot cast the spell at a higher. So you might be a level 12 character, but you have to cast the cantrip as if you were level 1. Because then I mean, to be fair, you're still doing a d10, and with 2 attacks you're doing 2d10, with 3 attacks you're doing 3d10. It's just the fact that you would not get the damage bonus. Or you would halve it, so maybe you would go, at the time where you get 4 beams, you actually get 2 beams. But that's the point this feature would deliberately call out the fact you have to cast at minimum. Effectively, the multi-attack would have to override how the class traditionally approaches spellcasting. As I said, I'm not sure it would really work without a lot of effort. You'd have to kind of custom build the class around it. Warlock already kind of does, because Warlock has become, well, this is where it gets complicated. Warlock kind of has it because we call Warlock the cantrip caster. Because Warlock has so few spell slots, they have to rely on cantrips. But if you think about it, Warlock doesn't have many more cantrips than any other class does. They have Eldritch Blast, which is their key cantrip that they can upgrade, but they don't get too much more. If you wanted something like multi-attack, you would have to probably build a class that is just, no, you don't get spell slots, you just have cantrips. This is entirely what you're built around. I'm not saying it's impossible. I could maybe see a subclass that would do it, because you could offload the intense mechanics into a subclass and basically go, hey, if you want an easy experience, don't play this subclass. If you want a difficult experience, play this subclass, because it has a lot of ifs, buts clauses. It's definitely a design angle you could approach. I just think I'm not sure it's really worth it due to the nature of the fact that while it can be annoying, the concept of, oh, I can't cast spells multiple times to keep up with attacks of the combat classes, you also sit there going, yeah, but my spell scales, whereas a fighter's sword never scales. Battle Channeler's gotten around this quite a bit because Battle Channeler has a lot of crit buffs. You get a maximum of 3 attacks, but if you crit, there's a lot of crit buffing. Paladin obviously has Smite. The Rogue has Sneak Attack. I think the main person that suffers is always the fighter. The fighter is the one that suffers the most, though, because the fighter is the one that's least able to get any buffs. Because this is the thing, I can very easily with Battle Channeler, because it's so tied to the dream, I can make more magic-y things happen. Whereas with a fighter, it's like you kind of have to be basic scrub face. You Jim. You don't know how to use a spell unless you take a subclass that specifically says otherwise. But generally, Jim does not know how to use magic. He knows how to use a sword. He knows where the pointy end is, and he knows where to stick the pointy end. Or at least you hope Jim knows where to stick the pointy end. Otherwise, there are a lot of questions about what is he doing? What is the fool doing? The fool of a took. But yeah. So yeah, I'm not. Yeah, fighter's going to be difficult. Martial artist, I already know how I'm going to treat it, and I think it will make up for it because of, or at least it'll be interesting, hopefully, how I hope to resolve it. That is the hope. I'm not entirely sure though how to make this work. Right, so you get to pick an emotion. You now channel both of these emotions whenever you take the channel emotion action. So you pick your emotions, you channel the 2 emotions. How do we want to do this? So we will probably allow you to take both resistances. So so if you're a dream channel, your nightmare, your dream, you've now got 2 emotions. What we would probably do so how I think we want it to work is you only get the bonus for 1 trait. Or what we could do is We let you swap between light and dark. When you're in light mode, you use any ability that references your emotion will reference your light emotion, whereas when you're in darkness, everything that references your emotion will use your dark emotion. You apply both emotion effects to your mark effect. So basically what I've got to go down now is each of the emotion effects and work out how that works. No, it's fine, because what we specify is anything that affects a weapon's damage die type, or that asks for your channel emotion trait will only specify with your light or shadow. Anything that applies an effect for just channeling the emotion ambiently applies both at the same time. So if you mark a target, you get 2 effects. You only get to pick one trait. You only get to pick one damage type. You get both resistances. I think that's the best way to make it work. So dual state we will delete, because you don't need 2 abilities, because it's going to be basically one mega ability. It's going to be very wordy. Weapon of light and shadow I might relegate to let's think about this. Let's think about this a second. The point of weapon of light and shadow is what I want this ability to be, is that when you channel emotion, you create an echo of your weapon in your offhand, and this echo uses the opposite emotion. So effectively, so how I want it to work is you have 2 axes. The one on your right is anger. The one on your left is courage. The one on your right will use the emotion tied to anger. To make its attack roll, its damage roll, it'll use the damage type associated with anger. Whereas the left-hand one will use the trait for attack roll and damage roll tied to courage. And then we'll use the damage type associated with courage. Both will deal with the mark the same. Both will deal with being bloodied and determined the same. Both will deal with your shield the same. Those things get to double up. We have to cover those bits at level 1 because you can take the first degree to get 2 emotions, and then you can choose a completely different subclass. question is, do we want that duality early or late? It doesn't make too much difference, because what we're effectively letting you do I think I know how I want this to work. So yeah, I think we'll keep that the second tier. Summon defense. Yeah, so what I wanted to do was that you could summon a set of armor. I think we could still do that, and I think that's still fine to be a higher tier thing. I think the weapon is the bigger thing, because the weapon doesn't do too much. Then armor, we let you effectively summon a set of armor, and then its effects are determined by if you choose to be in shadow or light state. Light is probably very reactive, it reacts to being hit, whereas darkness tries to prevent you being hit. And then the capstone, I have no goddamn clue. Could go with just use whichever's higher. I think we'll leave it for now. We'll see where we end up. Because technically I don't have to worry about this bit for the skill bonus damage effect, because all it said was if you have this thing, add your skill bonus. So intense strikes, you have to pick the damage of your phase. We're nearly there. Strengthen channel. Persistent channel, feed, vent emotion. Dream champion. Use whichever phase you're in. Okay. So that means, so what we've established is for an AP you can swap between light and shadow. Your channel emotions, you get the benefits of both. Adept channeler, you only use the emotion tied to your phase to determine attack roll and damage roll modifiers, but other than that you get the effects of both. Intense stripes, you only use the damage type associated with your phase. Defensive channel, you get both. Dream champion, you get both. I think I covered the bases there. Getting there, folks. Three things. Weapons of light and shadow. Okay. I think that worked. Nearly there. Yeah. Something a bit more. What do we want to do with something more? Ooh, what's going on, PC? My mouse is disappearing. Um, Oh. Channeler done. So next up for us will be the Bard, uh, which I've already started to make some effort with. Bard colleges, I have no idea yet, except I want one to be themed of the Red Mage. I think all the current Bardic colleges. Yeah, I'm not really sure what to do for Bardic colleges. And then the other thing we need to do is I need to come up with the armor set abilities. So yeah, that is that. So what we are going to do is we're going to go on a brief break. Actually, how long have we been going for? Nearly 2 hours. Okay. Do dinner soon, to be honest. We are going to call it there, I think, actually, for today. Okay. So, for those who are currently here, thank you all for coming. Thank you for joining. We will see you all next time.